Today, we are breaking down the 2025 NFL draft class for the Philadelphia Eagles. I am joined by Eagles Eric of Eagles X's and O's. Eric, say hi to the people, and we'll hop right into the first round pick.
I've been following your content for quite a while, so it's pretty fun to get to give you my 2 cents on the Eagles and kind of go through this draft class. So I'm excited.
Well, thank you for that. You didn't even mention that. You mentioned that you saw a video before, but I appreciate it. I've been following your stuff as well via my friends sending you all the charts. And for all you Eagles fans, if you do see some beautiful top 30 visit charts, Eric's probably the guy who did it. So feel free to go check him out. The first round pick, though, Jahad Campbell, super small trade up, but there were some rumors that from pick 22 all the way up to pick 31, like they're on the phones trying to move up to get Jahad Campbell, which to me makes me feel pretty good about that shoulder, how it's doing. But Jahad Campbell was my dream guy for Vic Fangio. I love the idea of either being able to utilize him as an inside linebacker, or they're pretty much using him as an Andrew Van Ginkel. What were your thoughts on it? Would you have been happy even if you'd had to move up even more, or was this kind of the sweet spot for you?
Yeah, it's funny because last year people thought we'd have to move up for Quinyon Mitchell, me included. So
Mhm.
for them to wait patiently and take him at 22 was incredible. And this year it's a little different because they really tried, but they kind of just got phased out. The other owners were like, all right, I want an extra second and a future third. And the price was too high, so they didn't move up. And I identified Campbell as a blue chip prospect. So, of course, I was thrilled getting him at 31. And ultimately, the discourse devolved into
Mhm.
is he an edge or is he a linebacker? Which
Right.
kind of, I think, it detracted from the conversation about how good this guy is overall as a football player. So, what did you think of him?
Dude, I mean, Jahad, so I was probably one of the very few people. I didn't see this as a common take. I had him as an edge over a linebacker. Like, I thought that he was perfectly fine as a linebacker, but the one thing that I don't see anybody else noting that I love the most about his game, which is why I wanted him on the line of scrimmage so much, his snap timing. I don't know if you saw this as well. I have not seen, especially for a linebacker at edge, but edge included, someone getting off the ball the moment the ball starts moving. He is incredible at that. And the fact that he can drop into coverage, the fact that he honestly is a tenacious run defender, like there's just so many aspects to Jahad Campbell, formerly number one edge in his high school class. I was like, absolutely. And then, of course, with the amount of edges that are in the room, it's like if he was solely an edge, I'd have some concerns about the snap count, of course. There's injuries to Kobe Dean. Obviously, not necessarily anything outside of Zach Bond there to be a noticeable starter. So I like the flexibility for you to choose when and where and how to deploy him. So I was a huge fan of it. I mean, I gave it an A plus plus, and especially for that small of a move up, I was game.
Yeah, and I think he just has quite a bit of physical development to go to play edge. I
Mhm.
agree with you. His snap timing's great, really good, get off, and his bend is looks really good. He
Crazy.
just has no power at whatsoever,
Mhm.
which you could look over at another edge, Eziraku, and he didn't
Mhm.
have any power to speak of. So it's something that you can like look past. But I just find those coverage potential as so tantalizing
I love it.
that if in my ideal world, I'd have him 75% off ball and
Mhm.
25% on the line of scrimmage. And he could
Which
even
is
drop
great.
into coverage off the edge too.
Yes, that's what I loved about it. Like, I know that in certain packages, you have the outside linebacker edge rusher dropping into coverage. And the fact that Vic is so heavy into that zone focus, it's like it works perfectly because you can also mask blitzes with Jahad Campbell and then have him drop into coverage. But also, you always keep the offense guessing as to what you're going to do because he's such a Swiss Army knife. But I mean, I think even for his size, I thought that he was powerful for, again, big asterisk for the size. When I ended up seeing him come and test at the combine at not the 240 range, I was like, okay, early on, it's going to be difficult to be a full time edge rusher. I mean, he's built like an absolute beast. I just don't know how many times you're going to have the successful Nolan Smith project to where you have someone who's a little bit undersized in terms of weight, but still properly sized in terms of actual build and play strength. I still love it though. I mean, for me, that was the dream pick. Now, if they moved up and paid that much, like let's just say an extra two, I'd be a little bit uncomfortable. I will admit. But was there another player? If Jihad wasn't there, what do you think their thought process would have been, slash, who they would have gone with?
Well, coming into the draft, I think the apple of their eye was Walter Nolan, and
Mm,
I will say a little bit of self-aggrandizing. I put him to the Cardinals in my mock draft. So
you and I
that
both.
yeah,
Yeah.
he wasn't even close to that draft range.
Right.
If let's say Campbell went the pick before then, my guess is maybe they would have went Ezeraku. They brought
Mhm.
him in on a 30 visit. They've got familiarity with that program, highly productive, and they, as we mentioned earlier, they
Right.
do need some edge depth.
Of course.
Remember, they brought in Ojulari and Uche, but it's just 1 year deals. You don't so
Right. It was something that I was talking about in the pre-draft process as well. When I see teams doing 1-year deals, for me, that indicates that they actually want to continue drafting that position, because 1-year deals are just mitigating in case you don't get what you want, right? I mean, like, you could technically just cut guys right away if you need to. Hopefully, that's not the case. Not a huge fan of wasting cash, but of all people, I trust someone who's a cap specialist like Howie. But whenever I see a 1-year deal, to me, that just signals we know we have a need, we want to fill it, and we don't want to force it. And that's why I was like, okay, with the amount of 1 years at the edge position, I was like, okay, the amount of it made me realize that they knew they needed it. But I also, the draft ended up falling the way that I kind of expected it to. It was either going to be edge super high or edge super late, because when you get multiple, it's like, do you really feel comfortable going that mid range? It looked like they were a bit not very confident about that middle range of the guys. But second round, Andrew Bakuba. I heard that Howie was trying to trade back and they kind of just felt there was too much of a risk. And I know Howie loves his picks. I'm not the biggest Andrew Makuba guy on planet Earth. I know that you're a fan of Andrew Makuba from some of the tweets that I've seen, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
yeah, yeah.
So, like, I mean, Andrew Makuba, for me, I've loved the fact that he has so much flexibility. He's super smart in zone coverage, so I think he's a very, very good fit. I was a little bit let down by him compared to the excitement I got by watching other players versus him, which is okay. But I do think it's a great fit for the system. I agree that safety is absolutely in need. I would have loved a trade back, and I do think they would have loved it as well. But especially with the concerns of him potentially going earlier, I understand sometimes you have to just stick and pick.
Yeah, Makuba wasn't a top of the wish list for the Eagles. If you
Right.
watch their draft like war room
Mhm.
video, it does this whole preamble with Campbell trying to call up for an hour and they can't get it. And then it
Mhm.
goes, boop, all of a sudden, Andrew Makuba at 64. Later,
Yep.
we find out that they tried to go up into the high 40s and
Mhm.
they were asking astronomical prices. And so they didn't move up.
Right.
If they moved up that far, they're looking at someone else. In my mind, it was probably someone like Nick Scorton.
Mm.
So once you get down to that 64, we talked about it. They had a big need at safety. It's like, who is the best scheme fit? And in
Right.
my opinion, they just defer to Fangio.
Yeah.
Throughout his whole career, he's liked these quick, smaller safeties. So it fits the mold perfectly. I have concerns about him, mostly surrounded around his slender
Yeah.
body.
Yeah. He's like, what,
But
185 at the combine, I believe.
went up 10 pounds at his
Mhm.
pro day is the reports. And so like if he can get to 200, I'd be thrilled. It's just he's such a aggressive player that if you do that with a slender body type, it's like a recipe for injury.
Yep.
So and like if you tell me the alternative was they took Darius Alexander at 64 and then Watts a pick later, they ended up trading down from 96.
Yep.
That's a palatable combo for me as well.
Trust me, when I saw that Watt slip that far, I don't think any of us expected that. I don't know how many NFL teams expected that. That's where I was like, hmm, interesting. But I think Makuba, in my opinion, was better than Watts. I had Makuba above Watts myself. And, again, for the maybe not the physical build, but the actual mental build and the, actual production that he has, I do think that his abilities translate very well into the system. It wasn't my favorite pick. I think I gave it like a B minus, and it's still, again, a good pick. But I do kind of wish they were able to get a little bit more value, especially without that third round pick in there. Well, or the late third, I should say, kind of being able to move up slash down. I would say you were talking about Scorton being a potential trade up target, and I absolutely think that he would have been a great system fit. I wonder if Ezuraku was also on the board for them because he went at 44 to the Cowboys. Maybe that's why the prices were astronomical. Like, there was probably a chance that maybe Dallas heard that Philly was calling up and they projected maybe Ezuraku would have been the guy. I'm not
Mhm.
necessarily sure though.
Yeah, that sounds like a reasonable theory. They both of those guys were 30 visits.
Right.
Howie typically likes to draft from guys they bring in.
Yep.
Although I did say I think this is the year they would pivot
Mhm.
because they just were. I mean, people could basically predict that they were going to draft from that list, and now you won a Super Bowl. So you got to change it up sometimes just so people can't snipe the players you want.
See, my buddy and I were talking about this, and we thought there was two conclusions. One, which is you're absolutely right, and they're like, let's play some mental games and have players that we're not necessarily fully sold on brought in on top 30s, and maybe we get sold on it, but our primary targets we're going to keep secret. Or the other way is maybe they were doing what they did on an average basis, and teams ended up reading the playbook and said, "We're not letting the Eagles get this guy." So it's intriguing to see the balance between the two. But I mean, regardless, the first two rounds ended up coming out with two players that are going to probably start very soon, if not right away. And both could end up being amazing scheme fits and amazing impact players in the very near future. I do think round three was a little bit of a misstep for Howie. Like, I was a little bit disappointed, and even day 2 for that matter, because they didn't get that trade back option like they were kinda looking for, or the trade up option. Then they end up moving back multiple times and then getting Ty Robinson on day 3. I wonder if they are trying to do what they did last year, which was continually move back and then understand that maybe the players that they wanted would fall to them. I don't think that the players that they're actually trying to move back and target were the ones who genuinely fell to them in that third round territory, hence the move backs. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable theory. A lot of Eagles fans looked at Charles Grant as a potential
Mhm.
target. They
Yep.
moved back, and he went right before their original move back, and then they moved back again, which
Mhm.
would that type of movement would kind of lend credence to that theory.
Yeah.
And Howie is on the record saying like they were looking at second, third round O linemen.
Right.
That's pretty much a fact at this point.
Mm.
So yeah, I totally buy that. And then they went on to draft like 3 out of 4 picks offensive linemen later in the draft. So it's clearly
Literally.
part of their to-do list.
And UDFA as well, which we'll talk about. Like, they ended up loading up on that offensive line for sure. But then they ended up moving back multiple times, ended up getting Ty Robinson. Now, for me, I had Ty more as like that fifth round range. I mean, again, fourth, fifth round range, tomato, tomato. But he does fit instantly. He also has that flexibility to kick the edge. I almost wonder, rather than it being like an exact replacement for Milt, I think that it's almost BG esque because you have somebody who is a little bit undersized for the defensive interior position at points, who also has edge experience on certain reps. I wonder if they're going to like that, especially for nickel packages when they're going to run even fronts. Maybe that's going to be a way, especially early downs, to mitigate the run issues when you have a little bit of the more raw Jalix Hunt types that could end up having some early deficiencies. What's your
Mhm.
vision for the Ty Robinson role, though?
Yeah, I think he checked a lot of boxes for them. He was lining up at a lot of different
Mhm.
alignments, which obviously they have a lot of these different types of fronts that
Right.
they'll run. So if he can play inside and out, that's a big bonus. And he was able to create he had pretty high pass rush win rate,
Mhm.
even from over the center all the way out to the edge.
Right.
The To me, the main thing that made him drop is he was like a late breakout and he's old.
Yep.
And now with the COVID years, I think it's a little bit more digestible to like take these guys. I don't think he's a world beater, but adding to the line depth, having versatility, I
Right.
think it definitely checks boxes. The last thing I'll say about him is reports are he played roughly around 310 in his last year,
Okay.
and then he dropped all the way down to 288 for the
Yeah.
combine.
Yeah.
And we know he had this crazy RAS score because his combines, all his times were so good.
Right.
I do wonder, will they play him like at what's his playing weight going to be? And that'll
Right.
kind of tell you, is he going to be biased more towards interior or maybe more 4i or 5 tech?
Well, it's something that I love that you did. You're talking about taking a deep dive into Moro Jomo. I've been a huge advocate for Moro Jomo. I was a huge advocate for Milton Williams as well. Loved him from the day he was drafted from Louisiana Tech. I mean, for me, that was my guy that year. He was my defensive interior too. I'm not going to say I get my flowers for it. I didn't expect for him to have the late breakout he did, but still a player that I loved. Moro Jomo, to me, I was baffled at the fact that people didn't have faith in him, which to me gives even more credence that Ty Robinson's more of a BG style replacement because of that flexibility than necessarily Moro Jomo. And I still remember I was watching after Moro was drafted that summer, watching a bunch of offensive linemen versus Moro Jomo. And I'm like, who the hell is this Texas defender who's just destroying on a consistent basis? And it was him. And I honestly wonder why he fell so far. But I think you'll agree with me. He genuinely deserves the snaps that I think need to be redistributed. And same thing with JD. But
Yeah, if anyone is interested in Ojomo, I did a film breakdown you can find on YouTube. Just type in the Edge Moro Ojomo breakdown.
there you
But
go.
yeah, I'm blown away by this guy. The reason I think he dropped was he's very small
Mhm.
measurables and he didn't have a lot of production. And obviously surrounded by a lot of talent on that line. So it's one of those things where you like they NFL teams, a lot of them they'll have thresholds. So if
Mhm.
he may have just been below their size threshold, and then they didn't even take a closer look, and then next thing you know, he drops to the 7th round.
Right.
And I think this may sound crazy to you. I think his upside may exceed Milton Williams.
That doesn't blow me away at all. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I ended up being baffled seeing him. Like Milton Williams, I remember I wasn't watching an all 22 at the time. I honestly it was like very early on, right? And it was just watching Zach Wilson play against him. And I saw him break through the offensive line. And I'm like, holy shit, who the hell is this guy? And then of course I ended up digging into it. And then, from there it was like, okay, this guy's an absolute beast. Like that's how I discover the players I love the most. And surprisingly, a lot of those ones that are just catching my eye out of nowhere usually go to Philadelphia. So shout out to Philly. I'm like, shout out to Philly. They know what's good. But I mean, Morrow was more consistently dominant in the sample size that I saw him than even Milt. So I would not be shocked. I'm just gonna be honest. I'm not doing it to kiss your ass. It's like
Yeah,
genuinely, I think it's a very reasonable take even though we're right now in that spot where it's unreasonable. You say it a year ago, I mean, cool, right? Like it's like, okay, that's not a big deal at all. Like guys have breakout times, and I definitely think Morrow could be in that breakout region. But I'm curious what you thought about the next pick. Mac McWilliams, before I tell you mine, even though you said you've watched my content, I don't know if you know my opinion on McWilliams, but I'll let you take it from here because I'm a little bit intrigued about this one.
yeah, it's another guy. I don't even think they had any type of meetings with him
Right,
pre-draft. It's probably one of these guys that one of the scouts identified as a good backup nickel, which
right.
is something they went into the draft targeting, in my opinion, with now Avante Maddox moving on.
Thank God.
And I think his tape looks pretty similar to Maddox.
Mm,
So I think he's got some versatility. If in an emergency situation, if you needed him outside, he could do it.
right.
If you wanted to put him at safety, I think he could do it. I
Mhm.
think his best role is as a nickel for sure. I like his movement ability, and I think it was one of these analytics guys because you look at his zone coverage grading and from some various charting services, and he's like off the charts.
Mhm.
And he had good testing times. So he's just to me on paper, like Eagles are like, okay, fast, good in zone coverage, versatile,
Yep.
looks like Avante Maddox. Boom. That's kind of how I see that pick. So I don't know your opinion on him, so I'm curious to hear.
So, I hated him. No, I'm just kidding. No, he was a top 50 player for me.
Oh,
I
okay.
adored him. I'm a sucker for zone corners. Like, I've realized that throughout, like, the past couple years as I've continued to hone in on exactly what I love about corners. It's funny because my buddy, he's almost the exact opposite. He thinks, "Okay, well, I want you to be able to cover a man, and then I could teach you zone." I'm very much the opposite, and especially for Vic Fangio, you want them to be very smart with processing what the hell's going on around them, which is, why Coop ended up being an absolute savage in the Super Bowl. But I love a player who understands the game of football. if you understand what's going on around you, most likely I think you can understand what's going on in front of you. So that's my style of being able to understand it. And with Mac, I didn't get to grading him until after the Senior Bowl because I studied this guy BJ Adams before, and BJ was all right. It's not a horrible player at all, but I went to the Senior Bowl to look at him, and then I just see this little guy. I think he was wearing number 27 at the Senior Bowl, and he was just popping off. He's this little guy who's aggressive, and I love aggressive corners, even when they're small. This past year, we had Jalen Smith, which I know he was a top 30 for Philly. I wonder as well because I think Houston took him before they ended up trading back as well. I wonder if he was one of their targets there with Grant. And then I know that Upton Stout, who went to the Niners as well, that was going to be that like trio there with Mac McWilliams. But the zone coverage was incredible. And I kept telling my buddy, I'm like, this is someone who either is going to work in the nickel, which I think he will. I actually have a vision for him to be Isaiah Rodgers. I think he has the athleticism and then that zone IQ with the physicality to kind of make it work. And I saw him versus, sorry to yap and rant. I saw him versus Tet McMillan. And it's just like, he's not afraid of size either. He's a
Mhm.
smaller guy, but he's not afraid. So I really love the pick. And to me, it was arguably my favorite outside of Cam Williams.
The one thing I would distinguish between those players you mentioned,
Yeah.
Rodgers, is when he first came over the Eagles, I was like, all right, I gotta watch this guy.
Yeah.
And I just remember him having like the go-go gadget arms. And I'm like, oh, this is how he's able to survive on the outside. And
Right.
then you look at McWilliams and it's like ninth percentile. That's where
Right.
I become a little bit
Right.
more scared of him playing on the outside. But like to hear he went toe to toe with McMillan, that's encouraging.
It was I was unbelievably shocked, and I don't know why, but there's these players in this past draft class, whether it be Jalen Smith, whether it be Mac McWilliams, regardless of the fact that they might have T-Rex arms and probably identify as a T-Rex from time to time, it's just they end up making it work. They use the ferocity of the T-Rex rather than the arm length of it, and that could end up working out. But I think you make a very good point. When you do have that legitimate limitation, you have to be the exception, not the rule. If you are in the nickel, and I think Mac McWilliams plays the run well enough too, especially in Vic's system, I think there's going to be a lot better of a chance for you. So I'm hoping for it, especially with the short range quickness, the IQ he has. I think he'll thrive there. And I do know that, and you do as well. Coop wasn't drafted as a nickel. He was drafted with kind of some ambiguity and the
Yeah.
willingness to be put on the boundary. I doubt that they actually execute that. But if McWilliams looks great at nickel in the preseason, do you think there's a chance?
Oh, no, no, not at all.
You're
They
saying like
already
Sunday?
said
Yeah.
they literally said Fangio said DeJean will be staying at nickel, like, firmly.
Okay.
Um, but like I said earlier, in a pinch situation, I could
Yeah.
see it,
Yeah.
and if you think about it, these top 5 guys, they're all versatile players.
Sure.
So, to me, it's clearly thematic for the Eagles draft that they wanted to give Fangio versatile guys, and he'll
Yeah.
make it work.
Yeah. I mean, I love it because again, Vic is basically getting chess pieces, like you said. And even with the next pick, I think it is very similar. Smile, or I think what Smile London. It's not Smile.
Yeah,
Um,
I've heard every pronunciation, but
everything under the sun.
I believe it is Smile.
Yeah. Okay. So Smile London, linebacker out of Georgia. I didn't love the range this was taken, but I love the fact it's from a system that has a pretty linear growth program at Philadelphia. I mean, the Philadelphia Bulldogs of all things. It's at a position of need to where Jihad on that 25% that you're talking about, where he is on the line of scrimmage instead of off ball. If Smile works out, it makes sense. And I've heard there's some good character parts of Smile London as well. So locker room does really matter, especially if you're a backup. You're going to just be nagging all the time, just trying to start. It's going to be detrimental to everybody else. So I'm excited for him to be added to, again, a pretty weak in terms of depth linebacker room. And it makes a lot of sense why you guys ended up letting go. Oh, I'm forgetting the name of the Sam linebacker off the top of my head. He went to what? San Francisco?
Burks, Oren Burks.
Warren Burks. There we go. He's formerly of San Francisco. So it makes a lot of sense why where Smile London's probably going to end up having a potential role.
Yeah, and when I watched him, I was like, "That's a build of a safety." It's kind of strange watching him.
Hmm.
I think he's another guy who stands to benefit from putting on weight, And you
Yeah.
could say
Yeah.
that about all of these guys probably that they
True.
stand to benefit from putting on weight. But Eagles care about this. Some people think it's irrelevant, but he was a 5-star coming out of high school,
Right.
one of the top recruits in the nation, obviously going to Georgia.
Mhm.
And he's another guy where on paper he checks a lot of boxes, extremely athletic.
Yeah.
I really don't know what his floor and ceiling is. It's easy to just say like, "Oh, extremely athletic, raw prospect. He could be out of the league in a year or a pro bowler."
Right.
I don't necessarily think the range is that wide. I think he's more of a depth player who can be
Right.
a special teams ace.
Mm.
And then, you know, if one of these guys goes down, you have like Jihad Campbell insurance. We know he has like shoulder and knee problems.
Right.
So, it's kind of funny that he's kind of in the same mold, although probably doesn't have the edge prospects that Campbell does, but
Right.
just in terms of being a rangy, slender linebacker.
It is intriguing, because, I mean, again, you're trying to look for the beef in the linebacking room, like, the legitimate heavy like, the heavy hitters, the way that well, I mean, I'm trying to remember the last time I remember, Kendricks, right? He used to end up saying, like, 245 and ready to go, baby, and it's like, I kinda miss having, like, a bulkier linebacker. Is it Kendricks? I'm trying to remember, like, Michael?
He was much thinner.
I thought his phrase was 245 and ready to go, baby. I might be wrong about that. Like,
Yeah, I'm trying to think of
far
like
wrong.
a bigger linebacker. I mean, Burks, to be honest, was pretty big compared to
Fair
what
enough.
they've been putting
Yeah.
back there.
But regardless, it's a good linebacking crew, and then again, having that special team instant ability because of that athletic profile, and then as he adds weight, being able to have that redundancy at linebacker, to me, it makes a lot of sense. The one that I was a little bit confused about, and especially in the moment when Cam Williams was on the board, my guy APR was on the board, Antoine Powell Ryland. So I'm spoiling the fact that I love the end of the draft. But I mean, even Aeneas Peebles for that matter, like I ended up seeing Drew Kendall get taken. And I'm maybe you understand Drew Kendall better than I do in terms of the fit. I don't really see anything that can carve out like a legitimate role with him. I did not really see that, and especially with the way that I've heard Cam Williams even being mentioned as a guard, it makes me feel even worse about the pick.
Mhm.
But feel free to like change my opinion and let me know why it might have been a better pick because
Yeah,
fully
I
wrong.
think I could add some context. So
Yeah.
last year they tried to draft Dylan McMahon because he was one of these guys that had yeah, there's one of the drills, I think 3 cone, right? If you
Mhm.
have exceed a certain time, there's like a good chance you'll become an NFL player. It turns out he was just way too small framed to
Right.
succeed. So they needed a guy who could snap the ball. And
Mhm.
they brought in Nick Gates. Now, in my opinion, a terrible player. So when it finally got to like the big games in the playoffs, they were shuffling around the line, moving Landon Dickerson in to snap the ball. It's obviously not ideal.
Mm.
So when they announced the pick, they specifically wrote center slash guard. So that they want to get this guy on the roster because he can snap the ball and he is better than like your third guard as a
Mm.
backup.
Okay.
He's much bigger than McMahon,
Right.
so he could potentially survive there. That's kind of why I think they went after him. I don't think he's ever going to be like a stalwart.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a 6th round pick at the end of the day. You are kinda drafting the depth at that point, and I will say this, Drew actually looked pretty solid at the Shrine Bowl here in Dallas, like, I know there was, another one of the Boston College linemen, I believe, there as well, but, between the 2, Drew looked a lot more polished. If I'm not mistaken, he was at the Shrine Bowl, correct? Trying to you get these drills or these
Yeah,
damn
it
weeks mixed
wasn't.
up.
No, it wasn't Ozzy Trapilo, was it?
No,
Yeah.
Trapilo was in Mobile. I
Okay.
loved Alex Trapilo, man. He got drafted higher than I expected, but that's a conversation for my Bears guys. I mean, I loved Ozzy Trapilo, but I got to see Drew Kendall in person as well because Boston College came to SMU, and again, I was enamored by Trapilo more than anything. But I do think he is a solid depth lineman. Again, you were talking about the fact that you don't really have a legitimate snapper to and I do think that's a pretty solid point. I mean, you do need to get the ball to the quarterback. Playing center is not as easy as just, you move from center to guard or guard to center, excuse me. But you know what? I feel a little better about it. Thank you for that. I appreciate
I
that.
I've heard rumors like the Packers might be moving Jenkins into center, so
Yeah,
that it'll be interesting how
I
that works out.
know. Yeah, I heard that. I'm like, dude, the amount of interior offensive linemen the Packers have just blows my mind. I don't understand that. But I mean, yeah, Jenkins at center, man. I don't know what to think of that personally. I don't know. But like you have to snap the ball. Like where the ball goes to the like your precision as a snapper matters.
If
It's crazy.
when Love is under center, he's
Yeah.
gonna be like looking smaller than the lineman. It's just gonna be bizarre.
That is good. Yeah, Elton is an absolute he's a mammoth, man. It's gonna be surprising to say the least how that ends up working out. But next, speaking of someone who, you know, another quarterback. I don't know. I was trying to make a connection. It failed. Kyle McCord. I mean, you guys are consistently drafting solid throwers of the football in the sixth round, whether it be McKee and McCord now. And I love it. I really do because McKee is not going to be there forever, unfortunately, because I do think he'll probably try to find a place where he can compete because he's that good. I think you'll agree. I mean, McKee's an absolute savage. And you need some insurance for that backup QB position. I think Cal McCord is one of the best throwers of the football in the class. I think the playmaking, a little bit worse, which is why he's there in the sixth. But I actually really do like how he developed there at Syracuse, the way he was doing at Ohio State. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, he's a kind of guy where if he was 6'5", he probably would have went in the second round or something.
Right.
So, the Eagles, they always do this every year or every other year. They'll draft a late round quarterback and then ultimately try to flip them for a higher pick than they took him with. I think it's same deal here with McCord. Eagles fans were getting jazzed up when they acquired
DTR.
DTR.
Yeah.
I don't even think he's a real NFL player. So I think they just wanted to get in like a true third quarterback. And
Right.
then in the scenario where McKee has to come in, you actually have a legitimate backup.
I honestly wonder, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. The Kenny Pickett trade that yielded DTR, I wonder if Cleveland forced him to be part of the deal just so they can get him kind of off the roster. Like, and I mean, imagine if they had six quarterbacks right now. That'd be absolutely ludicrous. Like, I just wonder if that was part of it. Do you think there was any chance that it was like
Well,
kind of just forced to be like, we'll take Kenny if you take DTR?
yeah, I think it's possible. And the reason I say that is because you could also make the same argument in the CJ Gardner Johnson trade.
Mm,
They took Kenyon Green. I just find it hard to believe that the Eagles looked at Kenyon Green and were like, all right, we can make something with this guy. I
right.
know Stoutland's incredible, but you can't turn well, I'll save you the analogy, but I don't see how that's a possible
Right.
reclamation project. And there's definitely examples in the NFL where they're like, this is just for, when they report the deal, the fans don't just get pissed and be like, wait, we got nothing in return.
Mm. I mean, I could that is such an intriguing idea to think about as well. It's like fans also just don't understand how to appreciate pick value the way that maybe you and I do. So like when you get to hear, oh, it's a former first round guard. And I mean, I don't know if you saw this with Kenyon Green. My favorite game of him from college was his game versus Alabama, where he played left tackle. Like, I love the tackle potential of him. Obviously, he's not shown any way, shape, or form that he could end up being a full time NFL tackle. But I genuinely wonder if there's some type of chance he could do anything. But I agree. It kind of felt like a little bit of a filler to be able to get something in return rather than, our King Chauncey is gone. But speaking of offensive linemen, we got two of them here. Let's bundle them together. Miles Hinton, Cam Williams. When Miles was taken, I was like, brother, like, how are you passing on Cam Williams? Cam Williams got taken. But when you hear Miles Hinton, and I think you probably saw this as well, there's a video of Stout talking to Miles Hinton. There's like more energy in Stout's voice with Miles than he ever did with Cam. I wonder why that is, but Miles just seems like such a good locker room guy that maybe it would make a little bit more sense than Cam Williams that a lot of questionable decisions over the past year, whether like he like with the drop off in his play, deciding to come out. Like I don't understand the whole entire thought process behind it. But what were your thoughts on the offensive lineman?
Yeah, I'm not as enamored with Williams, I think, as
Right.
maybe consensus was. I watched those two games in the playoffs where he gave up a million pressures, and I will
Yeah.
say this, I'm not an offensive line guru. I try to look at it through the lens of, like, the defensive player, like,
Right.
how much are they getting stonewalled?
Yeah.
So, Hinton to me, he's like the perfect Stoutland project, by all accounts, like,
Yeah.
high character, as you mentioned, obviously a giant
Mhm.
body,
Right.
and his main drawbacks from what I've heard from people who know more about offensive line technique than I do is hand usage. So if you're
Mm.
looking at something that could be really developed by an offensive line coach, it's technique with the hands.
Fair. Yeah.
So I think that's a great lottery ticket, and
Yeah.
then you just let Stoutland work his magic.
Let me sell you a little bit on Cam Williams. The games you watched were after he hurt his knee. I think that was the big questionable decision for me was him coming out after, I think he was trying to bank a little bit on him saying, "Oh, I mean, look at what happened before my knee." It's like, well, buddy, hate to say it, your biggest moments, you decided to play, first off, which is like, catch 22. It's like good for you because you're pushing through like a trooper, but also you just let your team down because you had the big strip sack by Jack Sawyer, shout out to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and ended up, getting, pretty much the game ended because of your lack of ability. I ended up saying he should be a guard early on because of
Mhm,
that. His
mhm.
movement skills just did not translate to the NFL as a tackle. Super heavy feet, but incredible build. It's like this is someone in 3 years, which weirdly enough is an interestingly similar timeline to how long I think you and I believe Lane will be around is like 2 to 3 more years, kind of play out the rest of his contract and then, end on a high note for him to actually have a chance to be the guy that he should be. But I do think it's going to be a very long project. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I like him as a guard actually.
Right.
I like Hinton much more as a tackle, and if you were gonna say like who's the Lane successor, maybe I would pick him.
Mhm.
Although what I think is most likely is they draft a tackle like first round next year, something like that. And
It
they
is
have
possible.
a zillion draft picks if they want to move up next
Right.
year, even if teams are still charging Howie like a Howie premium. They
Have
still
you?
have
Yeah.
Go
That
up,
Howie
yeah,
premium.
yeah. So I mean, there's just been so much buzz about the
Yeah.
Eagles wanting to trade up and talking about the astronomical prices. I
Right.
wonder if it was just true for all
Right.
teams. Everyone is charging a huge premium, or if they're like, you always get over on us. You
Mhm.
were the Super Bowl champ,
Right.
and
Did you put up a thumbs down?
no,
I was like, "What
no,
the hell is
I'm
that?"
not even touching my computer, and then I saw a thumbs down on my
I
face.
was like, "What the hell is that?" I mean, literally, the teams are like going like this. Apparently, that is funny as
Wait,
hell.
where did that come from?
I have no idea. I was like, when I caught the corner of my eye, I'm like, it's adding some emphasis to the conversation here. But regardless, have you dug into next year's class for the tackle group? Because I'm one tackle in, and I'm not gonna say his name, but he is from a school that might be the same as your first round pick. Talk about a project. I'll just put it out there. Like, ew, like, ugh. But I'm a little bit worried about that. There could be it might not be a good tackle class. But regardless,
Oh, okay.
I'm a little bit concerned. I know. I'm like, I'm
The
hoping it's
whole first round looks pretty wacky next year, doesn't it?
it does. There's a lot of discrepancies between opinions on players. The one thing I will say, it's a very good quarterback class, which for Philly is amazing because quarterbacks are being taken. That's not taken from the pool of guys that y'all want. So it could be actually really beneficial for y'all in that situation. But last but not least, speaking of something that's beneficial for y'all, in my opinion, I was a super fan of Antoine Powell Ryland until I heard that this guy has alligator arms. It's just like, come on, brother. Like, just I don't know, like do some like hanging pull-ups or something. Like just like do some hangs. Like, come on, man. And sub 32-inch arms. Not great. But what, 16 sacks on the year? I mean, first off, that's incredible. Second off, I'm not a huge guy on like how many sacks did you get? Like,
Mhm.
I do think it matters, of course. But the thing that I love the most about Antoine Powell Ryland, and I described it in my Edge video, the game I decided to hone in on and value the most for a lot of players, and I mean, this is just kind of a core of how I scout, looking at your worst game and understanding why did you fail? Did you fail because you were a little bit injured? If that's the case, I'm gonna make sure that then I'll watch your best game when you were healthy. Like I understand, or your worst game when you were healthy. But if it's something like for Antoine, like it just was like missed tackles in the run game, I'm like, Really? I loved him in that game though. Like I just ended up falling in love with him even like versus Miami versus a potential first round tackle in CC Maui Goa and then I believe a fourth round tackle in Jalen Rivers. Like he ended up dominating and fluid. He actually has a good size to him, over 255 pounds. Like to me, he fits really well with what y'all are looking for. And this is somebody that I think could get some reps. What are your thoughts on APR?
I like to juxtapose him with Eziraku being
Mm,
from that same conference, similar
right.
production in terms of sacks,
Yeah.
both undersized, but one guy being billed as like a first round pick, which I was always skeptical about, and the other guy probably more of like a fifth rounder. And
Right.
then we talked about it. It's just a jumble after the fourth.
Right.
So I didn't like keenly scout him prior to the
Yep.
draft. I was looking at edges like third, fourth round and up.
Right.
Um, so he was a little bit off my radar, but obviously now after we drafted him, looking into him more,
Mm,
the kind of the word on the street about him was disinterest in the run game, and I could
mm,
see why
there you go.
teams would just take him off their board or not be interested because of that. But
Right.
pairing that with the measurables. But then I also saw people pairing him with like Kaimon Rucker, and I'm like, wait a second, Pal Ryland is twice as good as this guy.
Right.
So just there are certain tackles who are going to be like, I have to go against this guy.
Mm,
His pad level, amazing.
yep.
Like the way he's able to bend the corner just because he's like low to the ground and just his movement ability and balance. That's just a pain in the ass if you're one of these tall tackles, especially if you don't have long arms. You're like, I
Mm,
can't get this guy. And he's a pretty good finisher.
yeah.
He played at Florida, so he's faced good competition as well.
Right.
I don't know what he's going to be. I do think he'll make the team.
Yeah.
The weird part about their edge room is there's so many designated pass rushers. It's like, why don't they have another run stuffer? They've got Uche,
Right.
Ojolare, even Hunt to me is more of that mold than a run stuffer, although they made him more into like a power player.
Right.
So like just them stacking up a million guys. My guess is they want to keep him on the roster because you
Right.
have him for 4 years and you clearly care about having DPRs.
No, absolutely. And again, with the frame that he has, I'm hoping he gets a little bit more interest against the run because he's not, again, like in that 230 to 240 range or even the low 240s. I do think he has a legitimate full time, even in an even front, he can end up playing on the defensive end spot. So I do think there's a lot for him in terms of ceiling. The question is, of course, will the arm length actually matter more in the NFL? Of course, it will matter more. I mean, when you get better players, little things like your actual competitive range will end up making a bigger impact. But the question is, will it beat the threshold to where the talent can actually get around it? I don't know. And I don't know how many NFL edge rushers would like succeed with sub 32s. That's a pretty small sample size. And I think you'd agree with that, especially in the run when offensive linemen have you at full range. It's tough. Like, when
Yeah.
you're engaging, you can end up dictating sometimes a little bit where contact's going to be, but when the offensive lineman's going to you to engage, ooh, that's where it could be concerning and maybe why he was a little bit afraid of the run. Maybe he just
Yeah.
pitched like it.
And I think they'll mask a lot of his weaknesses. A front that Fangio likes to run called cheat will
Mhm.
position one of the defensive or the edge in a wide nine.
Yeah.
That's going to help him tremendously. Just that rush angle, getting
Mhm.
his built up momentum. And then he won't really need to worry about playing in the run game. I just doubt he'll get on the field in run situations in general. And there was a few snaps where he flashed coverage ability. He's
Yes.
pretty smooth in coverage. He'll tackle in space, and that's obviously intriguing for how they like to use their edges.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. Again, I think he'll be on the 53. I don't think that there's a chance that you could put him on the practice squad after I think what he can do during the preseason time and be able to keep him there. I do think a team, especially in the NFL now, that edge rushers A get injured all the time, but B more importantly are so valuable. I think that will end up, especially because his pass rushing efficiency would end up being a very coveted option. So I do think he'll end up being surprisingly on the 53, but I mean, overall, I think this draft class was really top notch for how much of a letdown it is in terms of day two because of the fact that you could tell the players that Howie was hoping would fall didn't fall. Like you
Mhm.
ended up having your worst day two scenario where you can't trade back or trade up. So you end up settling for Andrew Makuba, which again, still a great player. And then on round three, not getting the players, probably Jalen Smith as well as Charles Grant. Didn't end up getting those guys either. Still ended up making a damn good class of it. But we got so. Oh, you want to go something
I
first? I
got
was
one
going to
more
come to you
thing.
first.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you know who went the pick, I believe, after Mac McWilliams?
Our guy right
I
there.
I believe it was
Great
Braden
Swinton.
Swinson.
Was.
So, I don't have you heard anything about him? Because I don't understand how he could have gone there on merit.
I will just say this. He and I have now unfollowed each other because of this, unfortunately. So it sucks because he was my favorite dude on planet Earth. He even wished me a happy birthday. So shout out to him. And again, he's not going to see this, but someone who I ended up actually having a really good experience with on the show, he ended up falling for character concerns and ended up hearing it from official sources that, first off, ended up hearing it from a direct source, Oregon. The reason he left is because Dan Lanning and him got into a scuffle. Then he goes to LSU and he ended up being benched for half of the Florida game, I believe, because of him being blatantly tardy. So just like two off field things. And then three, I heard he didn't interview well. And he came on my show and it's a great interview. I mean, I enjoyed it myself, but I could see maybe from an NFL front office the pure confidence he has in his power. It did kind of feel, and whenever I see players comment like, "All right, bet" on Instagram or Twitter after they don't get drafted, there's a pretty low percentage rate that they end up working out. Like I will say that. I'm hoping that's not the case, but there's a chance that it was the personality that dropped him, not the talent. And he
Okay.
was a late breakout. I mean,
Yeah,
let's be
that
honest
makes me
with you.
feel better about my evaluation. Because if it was like the NFL all just thought he was not good, I
It
would have
wasn't.
felt silly. But, like, yeah, I was like, "Oh, this guy is, like, getting pressures at will against SEC tackles, like,
Right.
he's good."
Right. Like 60 pressures, 9 sacks, 255 pounds, 6'4". Like I mean, 33 and what, 3/4 inch arms. Like he's built to be a prototypical edge. I had him as a first round grade. I really loved him. And again, my experience with him has been perfectly fine. Like I enjoyed every single moment of it. But I mean, from people who were in the know, they were just saying like it just was not, it was not pretty. So
But
it
Vrabel's
sucks.
gonna whip him into
Dude,
shape.
of all people for him to go to, it's like Tomlin or Vrabel. I trust those guys. And Stout too. Like, get these guys in line. I mean, probably Vrabel will be the guy who I think you and I will end up being the most pleased with how that ends up turning out. So wishing the best for Swinson, but ah, breaks my heart. And it breaks yours too, I'm sure, because we both like ended up having some pretty strong opinions on him.
Well, every single guy they took until Swinson went, I'm like, "Wait, how about Swinson?"
I think I'm I'm like, guys, like I still have a first round player on my board and it's like 140. Like, what the hell is going on here? It was definitely
Yeah.
like a kick to the balls because I'm like, damn, because I ended up putting him in a article earlier in the day that I was writing about him being a potential first round pick. And I'm like, this motherfucker's not going until day three. Are you kidding me? And yeah, I mean, when I heard that, I'm like, okay, that checks out. So unfortunate, but somebody who I had pretty damn high that I was shocked didn't get drafted, Holland Pierce. Like,
Mhm.
what the hell? I saw him at the Shrine Bowl too, and maybe you'll add some context to this because I don't know why he fell. 6'8", 340 plus pounds, and he has this journey on his Instagram page. He showed up to Rutgers as, for a lack of a better term, an absolute fat ass. I mean, he just was 340 plus pounds of not healthy build. I saw him in person at the Shrine, and you can see this even in his face through all his pictures. This guy got into really good shape. I mean, like, that's really good work ethic. It's very hard, especially when you're that size. And I mean, at Rutgers, you're kind of told just to plow dudes in front of you, pause. But it's just like eating is kind of an important thing for offensive linemen. And to be able to recomp through all of that and still be as good as he is, I just don't get it. Like 36-inch arms. Do you have any information as to why he fell?
I think it might have been a medical red
I
flag. He had
yeah,
some, like,
maybe.
injuries in his background, and one game he was carted off.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not saying that's for sure the
Yeah,
case,
no.
but, that's
When you're big, it's
possible.
tough too. I
Yeah,
mean,
so it's like, I think just, the other teams, they actually don't want you to be a behemoth. Like, they'd rather a
right,
guy who's like 6'6", 320 than,
right,
like, one of the biggest tackles of all time,
right.
but you give that to Stoughton, and he might carve
Crazy.
gold out of it.
I know, and I mean, 36-inch arms and really solid mobility as well. I got to see him like 5 feet away from me at the Shrine Bowl, and this guy was going up against legitimately relatively higher drafted offensive or defensive linemen, and he was holding his own, like, both with mobility and with technique, and I was just surprised. I had him as a top 120 player on my board. Like, again, maybe the size does scare some teams because it is very rare, especially with an injury history, for guys to be consistently on the field. I get that, but you got to take a shot. And maybe, like, I wonder what your thoughts are on this. Day three, like sixth round, maybe you're saying, I don't want to be selected somewhere. I want to choose where I'm selected. Like, maybe that was his idea. But I mean, man, was that what your thought was?
Well, I just don't know to what extent can the player say, like, "Hey, don't draft me."
I
But
trust me, I ended up knowing a guy, I'm not gonna say his name, but this was like 3 or 4 years ago. He was potentially gonna be drafted in the 7th round, and his agent called teams saying, "We wanna send him here, do not draft him." So
Mhm.
I know, like, firsthand that, and he ended up being a UDFA, ended up going to the Rams, and, he's no longer in the league, but I'm just saying, like, I would say Holland Pierce is a little bit better of a talent, but it is possible, I guess,
Yeah.
and, I mean, if you're talking about personality concerns of getting a 60 pressure, 9 sack SEC edge rusher to fall to the 5th round, there's a chance if your agent's saying, "My player doesn't wanna play for you," they're not gonna take you. So,
Yeah, and they
not a
did
good fit.
bring him in.
Oh,
He Rutgers, he's
yeah.
local, so I that's like
Right.
a free visit.
Right.
So they were clearly interested in. I
Yeah.
totally could see your scenario where, once he got to the 7th round, it's like it's objectively probably better for him to not
Right.
get drafted at that point.
Right. So I'm excited for y'all because that is a big project, but he has already shown over the past year leaps and bounds of development and 36-inch arms. Like, you can slim the guy down. He's already shown it. Like, he already has shown he can get healthier. So if you do want him to be more agile, a little bit lighter, so maybe he's going to be a little bit healthier in terms of his overall like physical profile, I could totally see that being the case. But let's jump away from offensive line. A couple other guys I liked here: Max and Hook, Toledo safety. I mean, first off, love the fact that you get somebody who was in the exact same room as QJ. But on top of that, you have Montrell Johnson and Giles Jackson. Those are the other two players of note.
Mhm.
What were your thoughts on those guys? Are there any other players that you want to toss in there too?
Yeah, I think Hook was drafted as like a favorite of Quinyon, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
From reports, they're like best friends.
Mm.
So
That's good.
he probably vouched for him. He may have said, "Don't draft Darius Alexander," because I'm sure he was on the Eagles' radar and they've got
Oh,
intel on him. But
right.
they clearly avoided him, and then he went to
Yeah.
the Giants, the pick after Makuba. So I wonder maybe if there
Mm,
was some red flags there. I
that's a good point.
candidly I don't know too much about these other UDFA's.
Right.
I do know that from what I've heard, Montrell has a decent chance of making the roster,
Oh, wow.
um, because remember they have AJ Dillon and
Yeah.
Will
Will.
Shipley. There, that's a battle to me. Will Shipley versus Montrell is a battle. There,
Mm,
I wasn't high at all on Shipley. He's a
yeah.
pretty one-dimensional back.
Yeah. He's a one cut back. Montrell was pretty solid there for Florida. People got so butthurt when I ended up saying Trevor Etienne was the better back too. It's funny, but I still thought Montrell was worth a day 3 pick. So the fact that y'all got him there, especially with the fact that that running back room is really heavily shifted towards being very favorable to Saquon Barkley. If he goes down, I mean, guys are not going to do too hot there because of the amount of weight on his shoulders. Montreal could end up carving a role. You're absolutely right. Giles Jackson, just the other one that I'd love to mention. He's a fun player. I don't know, based on the fact that you have Anaya Smith there, Johnny Wilson. Like, there's only so many guys you can keep on a roster. But I mean, besides that, again, Max and Hook. It's really intriguing though that you bring up the Darius Alexander of it all. I never thought about that. Like, there is a chance if Maxon Hook was a personal recommendation, and I thought Darius would have been the pick at 64. I was
Yeah.
like, "Whoa, so good." Maybe you're right. That hmm, that
And
is intriguing.
they also have connections with the coaching staff there, so
Right.
they know everything that there is to know about Darius Alexander, and they didn't
Yeah,
take him. And there was still
that's
like
right.
3 good safeties left on the board there. So
Yeah.
that's a total speculation, just to be clear,
Yeah.
but I mean, they could have taken him. They didn't. So
We're the
I
land of
think
theory here. We like it.
yeah.
That is that yeah. That is a good thought, though. I mean, there is a chance if you're ending up giving personal recommendations for, they absolutely are asking questions to Quinion being like, "What's good?" Now, I'm curious, did you think that tight end was blatantly ignored? I know we got the extension in, but behind him, I mean, do we have 2 SMU tight ends? We do, right? Calcaterra and, why am I forgetting the other one? I literally got to see him in person.
Bryant?
Huh? There's man, he came from Indy too. I'm tripping up on his
Kylan
name.
Granson.
Granson. So 2 SMU ponies pony up there. Love that. But I'm an SMU alum if you didn't know. That's why. Otherwise, like, what the hell am I talking about? But I mean, I do think you guys are kind of lacking. To be fair, Calcaterra's had his moments, but long term, tight end two, like being able to have that leader, I don't know. What are your thoughts on the situation? And do you think that maybe in the third round they were trying to move back and maybe get Harold Fannin because
Mm.
of the quarterback coach being on the team?
Well, that's interesting. I think they
Yeah.
like the top 3 tight ends a lot. They
Yeah.
had 0% chance of getting Warren or Loveland, and
Right.
then, like, they weren't gonna draft Taylor over Campbell.
Yeah.
Taylor might have been an emergency option if they couldn't trade down at 32. I
Okay.
think that would have been a terrible pick for what it's worth.
Agreed.
But, um I don't think they liked anyone after that. Fannin, yes, but he also went very high. So
Right. Where
it's
oh, right.
yeah,
He went at in the
Browns to
top of the third. I'm tripping. He went at the top of the third to the Browns, correct?
yeah.
Yeah.
I like relative to where I had him, it was fairly high.
Right.
And the problem with him is he can't fill Dallas Goedert's shoes because he's not going to
True.
play in line effectively, in my
Right.
opinion. And it's like they already have Dotson if they're going to put like run out 11 personnel because to me he's essentially like a power slot receiver.
Yeah.
So after that, they were like, all right, well, we're going to just have to bring back Goddard. And that's why there was all this hand wringing with the negotiations.
Mm,
Goddard saying, pick up that option bonus. I'll come back. And they're like, no, you're not. We'll give you 10 million. Eventually, they all decided what was fair.
yeah.
But you're right. They still don't have a succession plan. They're going to need to figure that out. That's why I'm not ruling out, like, could they trade for Michael Mayer still? I don't think that's impossible.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I was really hoping that y'all would have, and I think that's what we were talking about in the Twitter space like a couple weeks ago, or damn near a month ago at this point. And it's just like that seemed to be the move based on the quantity of day three picks, like how he likes to move them. Luckily, y'all moved pretty much the majority of them for elite value as well. So, I mean, I'm perfectly happy with how you guys ended up drafting it there. But I do agree. There's just the succession plan is not concrete. And next year, I don't know how it's going to be either. And I do think another spot, which I mean, feel free to correct me with Fannin. Let's just say they ended up drafting him, right? Maybe he fell to that third round pick that they were going to trade out. I think it was 96. Um, if they ended up taking him there, his direct competition right away either is going to be Dotson in the slot, or it's like that third wide receiver, or it's going to be Ben Van Sumeren at that H back spot. And BVS, I mean, I love that guy. I mean, that guy has just proven to be an absolute savage. So, would you agree with that sentiment that maybe the Van Sumeren of it all could also play a factor?
Yeah, yeah, maybe. I although if you're talking about as a move blocker, I like Van Sumeren way better than
He's a
Fannin.
beast. He's a
Yeah.
beast. Whenever you get to have a freaking linebacker that can run the way that Van Sumeren can, you just already know that it's going to be such. I love when we get to see positional switches like that. I mean, just I love it. That's like one of my favorite players on the Eagles as well.
I
Is
love Van Sumeren. Like I don't want to be disrespectful, but I think the Eagles maybe realize his football IQ is not through the roof. And but he's an unbelievable athlete. So
Right.
if you gotta harness that somewhere, and
Yeah.
they like the fact that he was able to come in and play fullback and like spring long runs for Saquon right out
Right.
of the gate
Crazy.
is incredible. So
It's
I'm
crazy.
very curious to see what he'll look like next year.
I know, and then especially with the, like, ambiguity of the tight end situation as well, is there gonna be a chance with his blocking capabilities, his athleticism, will he be able to get at least some testing in that range? I would love to see it during preseason at least, seeing,
Mm.
like, if he can end up making something work in that category, but overall, what were your thoughts on the class? Like, if you were to give it a grade, like, what were you, like, looking at? And especially even including the UDFA class.
B plus. I'm right with you. You got that blue chip talent right at the top. You've got some nice versatile scheme fits. Pretty much everyone's athletic. You got extra picks
Mhm.
and you gave Stoutland some players that he can mold. So to me, that's really good. Just, it's like any draft. There's a few guys that you personally like that were right there for the picking, and they drafted some guy from UCF instead. No, I like
Mac
McWilliams.
McWilliams shade.
Just to be clear, I like McWilliams. But like Braden Swinson sitting right there, and you're telling me Big Dom couldn't whip this guy into shape?
Big
So
Dom.
they
Love
probably
Big Dom.
just said this guy has real character problems. That's
Yeah.
the only explanation. But yeah, like definitely a good class. You know, it's one of those things where you can Monday morning quarterback it and say like, "Oh, I would have taken Alexander at 64, Watts at 96." Well, you don't know they're going to be there. So
Right.
you can't you can't say you would have done that
Right.
with the hopes that the guy will fall to your next pick. So all in all, I'm definitely a fan of this class.
That I mean, yeah, absolutely. Again, there's a lot of foresight that you need to have go right, and I think we literally saw them try to do that in the 3rd round by doing those trade backs and trying to, pretty much outsmart the system, and it didn't work. But, I mean, that's just what happens, whether it's Jalen Smith. Like, Jalen Smith is why I'm, like, so confident. I'm wondering if you think the same. I know they brought me on a 30, but, I mean, his skill set is eerily reminiscent of Mac McWilliams in terms of the zone IQ, the flexibility into the slot slash nickel, and then also the physicality that they can bring. And he ended up going like a couple picks before. Like, do you think that it felt very translatable in terms of the guys that they were looking at? They didn't get in the 3rd, so they had to move into day 3, and they addressed it with their next best for that range.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah,
They were like, "Well, can we get a versatile corner who can play inside and out?"
yeah,
And I don't know if they had Smith ahead of McWilliams. The fact that he was on a 30 visit is some type of indicator.
sure,
And the fact that they jump cut in the War Room video to McWilliams being drafted also adds more evidence to that theory.
right.
So yeah, I'm totally with you there.
Yeah. I mean, it's intriguing to see again. It almost felt like the NFL kind of knew what the Eagles were trying to go after and ended up addressing it based off of that. I mean, especially seeing the Cowboys get Ezraku, especially if the Eagles are trying to trade up into the 40s. I don't know. Maybe there's something there. But regardless, I love the class. And by the way, another reason you should go to Mobile. I got to meet Big Dom. Funnily enough, I ended up meeting him by accident. I was standing next to Steichen, and there's just a dude, this guy standing next to him, and I was just like, he was just chat. We were just chatting it up, and then I'm like, dude, look, it's Coach Steichen. Not even knowing it's freaking Big Dom. I'm like, the hell? So, Big Dom's like one of the chillest dudes I've ever talked to. But I mean, yeah, it's another reason to go. I'm just saying.
Oh
I'm just
yeah,
saying.
I'd love to go.
Dude, you got to make some time for it. But thank you so much for coming on. Feel free to plug yourself one last time before we say goodbye to the people.
Yeah, and for those who are just NFL fans in general, I do general content. If you're interested in analytics, film breakdown, schemes, anything like that, follow me, Eagles Eric, on Twitter at EaglesXsandOs. If you are an Eagles fan, I have a show weekly Thursdays at 7 Eastern called The Edge, and I cover all types of content. So come check it out.
Absolutely. I have a lot of respect for Eric here. I mean, I do love the work. I wouldn't bring you on the show if you didn't. So, I mean, again, you make some good stuff. Again, even my friends that are Eagles fans also follow your work. So if you guys are not doing it, make sure to do that. And for all of y'all who've been watching, thank you for your time. We've been doing this for an hour, but it's been a very enjoyable hour. It's kind of flown by, I feel like. So thank you again, Eric. And thank all y'all for watching. We'll see you later.